right, this is C11, C18. Basically, the Liberals have shut debate down. Then they said, we're going to take it to committee. Then they went to committee. And, you'll see what happened here. We're going to bring you through the whole thing. Check this out.
Should have just voted yes.
Will you ever learn?
The order of this meeting is to continue this debate. There was a question of adjourning the debate. The committee moved with a majority to continue the debate. So that is what, as chair, I have to do. So the order of the day is to continue this debate on the amendment. Ms. Thomas, when I actually stopped speaking,
I can't hear you, Chair. Is it me?
I have no idea.
You can hear the chair.
Everyone can hear the chair, though, right? So who is the person who said they couldn't hear me? Are you in the room or are you virtual?
I can't hear anyone. I'm going to sign out and sign in.
Oh, she's freezing.
Fine, Mr. Couture, you may do that. So, Ms. Thomas, when I have finished speaking, you may begin. You still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, those of us on this side of the table had every intent of hearing from the Minister today. And we do have every intent on being reasonable in terms of when amendments are due. That has been our position throughout this week as this topic of conversation has come forward. However, there seems to be a desire at this table to prolong, to keep delaying opportunity to hear from witnesses, in particular today to hear from the Minister, who has graciously given us his time to speak to Bill C11. And now it looks like we will not have that opportunity because a motion has been brought forward to the floor. And even though I moved that we suspend or adjourn debate, that motion was voted down by the members opposite. And so instead, they're insisting that we continue to have this debate on the motion that was brought forward to the floor.
Point of order, Madam Chair. It's Chris again.
Yes, Chris.
Again, the minister's here.
Debate.
The vote will take a minute, and we can get going to hear the minister. He still has 15 minutes here.
You had your chance.
Mr. Biddle.
Yes, Madam Chair.
That is not a point of order. The question was asked as to whether this debate should be adjourned to allow the minister to speak. The majority of this committee voted to continue with the debate. I am so sorry. I apologize profusely to the minister, but I have to do what the committee dictates that I do. So a point of order is that the order right now of what we're doing is to continue debate. Mr. Biddle, thank you.
Madam Chair, it's interesting to me that today in the House of Commons, the government House Leader actually said during question period that the Parliamentary Secretary should not interfere on committee business, and that's exactly what we see Mr. Biddle doing here over and over and over again.
Madam Chair, it's Chris Biddle. I have a point of order. This is actually a point of order.
Oh, you're acknowledging the other ones weren't.
Mr. Biddle.
This is Mr. Julian's motion that we're debating, and this is not the.
Sorry, point of order.
Madam Chair, I have the floor.
It's not.
Madam Chair, there's a lot of talk
back
and forth.
This is debate.
Ms. Thomas, I would appreciate it if you allow me to hear what is being proposed as a point of order before I can rule on whether it is a point of order or not.
It's fascinating that. Oh, sorry, Madam Chair. It's fascinating that Ms. Thomas is first to jump up and say that someone is interrupting her, but then will have no problem interrupting me. What the Parliamentary Secretary is doing has nothing to do with what the amendment is. It is not relevant to the debate. And Ms. Thomas should move on to the discussion. And again, we can get to the vote and still hear a little bit from the minister. He wants to speak, I'm sure.
Ms. Thomas. I think that was a point of order. It was a point of order asking us to get back to the order of this meeting, which is for you to speak to your amendment.
Thank you for that clarification, Madam Chair. Well, the amendment in front of us is that we would expand the time frame granted to be able to put forward amendments to Bill C-11.
Well, that was at the end of the week. The beginning of the week started out in the House of Commons with the debate being shut down in the House of Commons, and with the the explanation saying, well, we'll speak about it in committee. As you can see what happened in committee. So here's the beginning.
And I know they don't like me to be sad, so I'm asking them maybe to change a little bit how they do things, maybe to participate a little bit more to the debates, maybe to be a little bit more constructive, suggest stuff instead of trying to jam everything in the House. Madam Speaker, C-28 is about democracy, it's about our journalism, and they should support it.
Honourable Member for Perth Wellington.
I'm disappointed because I know my colleagues and I were looking forward to debating this piece of legislation. So far, the only Conservative to speak to it has been me, and I think that's unfortunate. But to my colleague for the Minister of Canadian Heritage, obviously it's a foregone conclusion that this bill will be passed. Time allocation will be guillotined on this bill. But I want a clear commitment from the Minister that he and the Government House Leader and the Whip will not interfere at committee, that they will permit the committee to hear from witnesses, that there will not be a guillotine or a programming motion at committee, and the Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage will be permitted to fully explore the bill, to hear from witnesses, and not be forced into a programming motion. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minister of Canadian Heritage.
Well, of course there will be very important work done at committee, Madam Speaker, and it will be a pleasure if my colleague invites me, him and the members, and I'll go because I have many important things to say on the bill. For example, that it's really an arm's length bill, a bill that sets a table, right? Puts a table there for the web giants, the tech giants, and news media across the country, big or small, to sit down and work on fair agreements for all. And I think that's extremely important, Madam Speaker. That's one of the things that we can discuss at committee. Other things that we discuss at committee, it's how this bill allows collective agreement. So that will include a lot of small and regional papers. So if I go to committee and if you ask me that question, I will talk about collective agreements. And so, Madam Speaker, of course, there will be lots of time to work.
MP Broussard, he is leading the front at the House of Commons here. He's the House Leader, and he's doing a stellar job. The polls are showing that the Conservatives continue to go up. Well, after MP Nader speaks on it, House Leader speaks on this. Check this out.
Madam Speaker, so if they don't listen to me or to us, can they at least listen to the people that maybe vote for them in the future?
A member for Barrie Innocent.
Since we're making up numbers, Madam Speaker, I do have a poll here that says 100% of Liberal voters didn't vote for an NDP Liberal coalition. But that's where we're at. And how quickly and how far the NDP have fallen in holding the government to account as a fourth party. They sound like lapdogs to the Liberal Party. But, Madam Speaker, this is important. This is important because, you know, the government representative, the minister, is talking about how, you know, there's been obstruction that's been going on. We've had 2 hours of debate on this bill. The official opposition, Her Majesty's loyal opposition, has had one speaker on this bill that has been universally panned. There's no question that, you know, there is a need to fix this issue. But when we actively engage in vigorous debate in this place, that's where ideas are formed, and that's how better bills are passed. And so to see the Heritage Minister use obstruction as a reason of ramming this bill through this House is rather disingenuous, Madam Speaker. And again, I ask the Minister, you know, his legacy will be not just a decline in democracy as it relates to this institution, and we wonder why people are losing faith in our institutions. This is the exact reason why, because voices are being silenced in this place, Madam Speaker, for millions of people who voted for opposition parties, including the Conservatives, and it is a legacy that he will have to live with. A free and open democracy does require an independent news media. We agree with that, but this is not the way to get this done.
The Honourable Minister.
Well, if my colleague agrees with that, that's a weird way of showing it, Madam Speaker. And when I see the Conservatives attacking the NDP because they come here trying to make a difference, and on some things we collaborate, other we don't, we disagree, which is fine. But for them, the word collaboration makes no sense. What they prefer to do is just jam things, filibuster, and listen to each other and clap all the time to each other and think that it's a good thing to shut down democracy like they're doing now. It's wrong. It's totally wrong, Madam Speaker. We have to move forward, and this bill has to move forward. And this bill will go to committee, and this bill will have hours and hours of discussions and witnesses. And again, I will go and I will talk and speak about the importance of this bill and how this bill allows collective bargaining to help smaller news outlets and regional news outlets. I will talk about how this will translate into fair agreements between the tech giants and media outlets across the country. I will talk about the importance of the press. I will talk about the importance of the press for our democracy, of the importance of a strong, free, and independent press, because this is what this bill is all about, Madam Speaker. This is what C-18 is all about. That's it.
Senator Schofield.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And to the Honourable Minister, this moment that we have now is not debating the substance of C-18. I look forward to an opportunity to debate that, but I will not get that opportunity because time allocation is being used again. I have to say that on principle, I object to it. I objected to it when the previous administration under Stephen Harper did it over and over and over again at a level unprecedented in parliamentary history. But now what's happening is the governing Liberals are normalizing the suppression of debate at second reading. We are moving towards, and maybe we can debate this in the standing orders debate we are to have, is the goal of governing parties in this place to shut down all debate at second reading and just say, you'll get to it in committee. That's not acceptable. And this is not acceptable, and I will not be voting for time allocation. I, on principle, have, I think, maybe once been persuaded that there really was a case for it. And today, on C-18, there is no case for it.
Wow. MP May is against it. That's, you know that there's something fishy with going on that. She's siding with the Conservatives, but also noted that he keeps saying in committee. Well, remember what happens in committee. Here's JJ. He does a pretty. He's animated. He's ticked, and like a lot of creators, everyone's worried about. The CRTC is going to decide what's in and out of the feed, how many journalists make you a media outfit. It's just very scary.
JJ, my questions are for you. There have been many witnesses that have come to this table, many here today with us, who believe that we should we can classify them as traditional artists, I believe. And they believe that we should rush this bill through the House of Commons. Now, I think it's important that we note that most of the witnesses and stakeholders who are in favor of this legislation would benefit financially if it passed. There's money that goes into something called the Art Fund. Those that contribute to it do so at a tune of 30% of their revenue. Of course, traditional artists can pull from that fund. However, digital artists cannot. So traditional artists have everything to gain. Digital artists have a lot to lose. Do you agree with this observation? And if so, can you comment on the damage that this might cause to those that are digital-first creators?
Yeah, no, that's a good observation. I must sort of say that listening to the other witnesses and hearing their testimony, it really makes me kind of wish that we could just erect this big wall between old media and new media. Because I, as a new media creator, do not want to live in the world of old media. There's so much regulation, and these people, they've got all these financing issues, and they want these subsidies, and then they opt into these, sort of funding pools like you're alluding to, and then they've got all these requirements for CanCon that they have to navigate. It just seems like such a stressful, painful, difficult world. No offense to anyone. Whereas, in the new world, in the new media world, which is much more dynamic, we're all independent. We're self-employed. We don't deal with government. We don't have to have huge teams of lawyers to navigate all of these media regulations. if we feel like working with Americans, we just do, and we don't have a big existential crisis about it. And we've been very successful. Like, as I said, like, what did I prattle off? Like, how many, there's over 100 Canadian YouTubers with 3.5 million subscribers and over 1 billion video views. Initially, I wanted that stat to be how many YouTubers are there with over 1 million subscribers. But the fact is that list is so long that, Social Blade doesn't let you read it all. So, and we've been successful. Like, so many of these self-employed, independent YouTubers in Canada have had tremendously successful careers as content creators, telling the stories that they want to tell, thriving and succeeding and becoming some of the biggest celebrities in the world. I talk to, I sometimes give speeches at elementary schools and stuff because all the kids want to see like a YouTuber. They want to see what it's like, and they all dream of that being their career. They want to be YouTubers as well. And I say to them, and I say to their parents, like, it's a completely viable career path because all it takes to be a successful Canadian YouTuber is to just, have the drive, have the initiative, have the self-discipline. I don't have to live in the world that these other folks do, where it's all about regulations and navigating regulations and opting into funding and all of this kind of stuff. We get our money from our advertisers. It's based on our ability to produce content that the masses want to watch. Not only Canadians, but a global audience. No Canadian YouTuber is successful just by appealing to Canadians. They're successful because they appeal to a global audience. That is the way that media works in the 21st century. I make videos about Canadian stuff. I make videos about Canadian history and Wilfrid Laurier and politics and all these sorts of things. International audiences eat this stuff up. They love it. They love to learn about Canada. They all, I meet people on the street who say that they've moved to Canada because of my videos, right? It's remarkable. And I just think that there needs to be a little bit more appreciation for how dynamic and how exciting and how entrepreneurial and how prosperous this world of new media content creation is in this country. And that this committee and that the House of Commons not rush through a bill that could possibly, inflict great damage on this dynamic, vibrant chunk of not only of the Canadian economy, but of the Canadian cultural industry in particular. So, if we want to continue to sort of regulate the old media and deal with that, that's fine. But just leave us out of it. That's my statement to this committee.
Very quickly, you're saying that Canadians are very successful in being able to reach a global audience. Obviously, they depend on that. What will Bill C-11 do to that ability? It seems to me that the agenda here is to try to make like Canadian content creators produce a certain kind of content for Canadian domestic consumption entirely. Like, if I understand kind of the agenda that's sort of being articulated here, it's that the goal of the government, the goal of the Parliament, is to create sort of mandates for Canadian creators like myself to make more explicitly Canadian content for a Canadian audience exclusively, right? Which is the sort of the reigning, consensus that dictates our existing CanCon regime when it comes to Canadian television and Canadian radio and all of that kind of thing. The idea is that government sort of has to set down an explicit sort of set of identifiers of what Canadian content is, and those identifiers are being done ostensibly for the benefit of a narrow Canadian audience that is determined to benefit from capital C CanCon. And in my world, we make content with a global audience in mind. Canadians are part of the globe, so Canadians are certainly part of that consumer base, but they're not exclusively the only people that we're targeting. And so I think that if you create a new sort of regulatory system, you're essentially sort of boxing in new media creators in sort of saying, like, we know you had global ambitions, but now we want you to dramatically narrow your ambitions, only target it to Canadians, sort of exist in this kind of like rarefied walled garden, only appeal to other Canadians, which will dramatically sort of shrink your revenue and will shrink your appeal, and frankly will shrink the influence of Canadian cultural creators globally, right? I think it is a good thing that Canadian content creators in the new media space are able to appeal to a global audience because, as I said, my own life is a case study of this. I have introduced the world to Canada. I have made many, many foreign people interested in Canada, interested in Canadian affairs, as I said, even to the point where they've wanted to move here. So I think that we have to be very sensitive to the idea that we live in a globalized world now. New media offers unprecedented global reach. And so we need to, I think, at least when it comes to new media, we need to get away from this idea that Canadian content creators only exist for the benefit of Canadians. We exist for the benefit of the world.
Thank you very much. I think your time is up. And I now move for the Liberals, for 5 minutes, Mr. Biddle.
Okay, if you remember the beginning of the clip, MP Pablo Rodriguez says, in committee, let's discuss this. Well, this is the committee that happened on Thursday, the day of the Ontario election, when no one was paying attention. So that was the comments, right?
Even up to consideration of clause by clause. So on relevance, and I'm seeing repetition from the Conservatives, I would call this again on repetition and on relevance, and you have the ability, of course, to make a decision on the committee's behalf, Madam Chair.
Mr. Julian, I made the decision on behalf of one. Can people please mute the mics on the floor? I cannot even hear myself speak. Thank you very much. Now, I made a ruling as a chair on Ms. Thomas's relevance and repetition. Mr. Perkins has just begun to speak. I cannot accuse him of either at the moment, but Mr. Perkins knows that he needs to be speaking to the amendment, and I think he's doing so as far as I can hear. Mr. Perkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, as I was saying, I'll start again because clearly the members weren't hearing what I was saying. So, we're dealing with an amendment here to the proposal by the government with their NDP partners to limit the amount of time on a very large and important bill that deals with freedom of speech on the internet, about the amount of time that members of Parliament have to put forward amendments on this committee, limiting it to 24 hours. Now, that's consistent, as I said, with the approach they've been taking with closure on this bill and many others in the House. And I would suggest that the most important part of the legislative process, obviously, is the ability to study clause by clause, to hear from witnesses in committee, and to propose amendments. It's really quite appalling that the government chooses to want to limit debate on their bill and the scrutiny of the public on their bill and the proposals that one might make on amendments. And in terms of committees, and perhaps the interfering parliamentary secretary would prefer to...
Mr. Cotto, can you just stick to what you're saying?
Yeah,
I think casting aspersions on our colleagues is not something we have a tendency to do in this committee. Thank you.
Well, I've heard lots of it already today with regard to my colleague, Ms. Thomas, but I will move forward on the issue of the closure that the government is trying to do in the limited time that the government is trying to do in terms of allowing for amendments on a very important bill on freedom of speech. It's kind of ironic that a bill that limits freedom of speech on the internet is having a limited time for amendments and a limited time for witnesses to actually comment. And the chair said, as is the case in other committees, that this committee is in charge of its own destiny. And when I look at the past comments around the 20 hours, I saw that Mr. Julian said that that was a good start and a minimum. Mr. Nader said that we could revisit that partway through. And I think that's what Ms. Thomas is saying in regards to moving the time frame for amendments, which would provide more time for witnesses to hear the minister, who the government decided not to hear from him today by rejecting the opportunity to adjourn the debate on this motion to hear from the minister. The NDP and the Liberal members decided to vote to continue this debate and then ironically say, well, somehow that we're delaying the debate when it is they themselves that voted to continue this debate where we were willing to adjourn it. So perhaps,
right. And here's our final clip. We're going to show you MP Harder. I don't know what to call this. Check it out.
Hear from the minister.
Biddle, that is not a point of order.
Should have just voted yes. Will you ever learn?
The order of this meeting is to continue this debate. There was a question of adjourning the debate. The committee moved with a majority to continue the debate. So that is what, as chair, I have to do. So the order of the day is to continue this debate on the amendment. Ms. Thomas, when I actually stop speaking,
I can't hear you, Chair. Is it me?
I have no idea.
We can
Is there a
we can hear the
problem
chair.
with sound? Everyone can hear the chair, all right. So who is the person who said they couldn't hear me? Are you in the room or are you virtual?
I can't hear anyone. I'm going to sign out and sign in.
Oh, she's freezing.
Fine, Mr. Couture, you may do that. So, Ms. Thomas, when I have finished speaking, you may begin. You still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, those of us on this side of the table had every intent of hearing from the minister today. And we do have every intent on being reasonable in terms of when amendments are due. That has been our position throughout this week as this topic of conversation has come forward. However, there seems to be a desire at this table to prolong, to keep delaying opportunity to hear from witnesses, in particular today to hear from the minister who has graciously given us his time to speak to Bill C-11. And now it looks like we will not have that opportunity because a motion has been brought forward to the floor. And even though I moved that we suspend or adjourn debate, that motion was voted down by the members opposite. And so instead, they're insisting that we continue to have this debate on the motion that was brought forward to the floor.
Point of order, Madam Chair. It's
amendments.
Chris again.
Yes, Chris.
Again, the minister's here.
Debate.
The vote will take a
Debate.
minute, and we can
Debate.
get going to hear the minister. He still has
Debate.
15 minutes here.
You had your chance.
Mr. Biddle.
Yes, Madam Chair.
That is not a point of order. The question was asked as to whether this debate should be adjourned to allow the minister to speak. The majority of this committee voted to continue with the debate. I am so sorry. I apologize profusely to the minister, but I have to do what the committee dictates that I do. So a point of order is that the order right now of what we're doing is to continue debate. Mr. Biddle, thank you.
Madam Chair, it's interesting to me that today in the House of Commons, the government House Leader actually said during question period that the Parliamentary Secretary should not interfere on committee business, and that's exactly what we see Mr. Biddle doing here over and over and over again.
Madam Chair, it's Chris Biddle. I have a point of order. This is actually a point of order.
Oh, you're acknowledging the other ones weren't.
Mr. Biddle.
This is Mr. Julian's motion that we're debating, and this is not the.
Sorry, point of order.
Madam Chair, I have the floor.
It's not.
Madam Chair, there's a lot of talk back and forth.
This is debate.
Ms. Thomas, I would appreciate it if you allow me to hear what is being proposed as a point of order before I can rule on whether it is a point of order or not.
It's fascinating that. Oh, sorry, Madam Chair. It's fascinating that Ms. Thomas is first to jump up and say that someone is interrupting her, but then will have no problem interrupting me. What the parliamentary secretary is doing has nothing to do with what the amendment is. It is not relevant to the debate, and Ms. Thomas should move on to the discussion. And again, we can get to the vote and still hear a little bit from the minister. He wants to speak, I'm sure.
Ms. Thomas. I think that was a point of order. It was a point of order asking us to get back to the order of this meeting, which is for you to speak to your amendment.
Thank you for that clarification, Madam Chair. the amendment in front of us is that